Greetings and salutations and welcome to Illegitimate Legends, the show where I like to talk about some of the more unusual League of Legends builds. This week we are taking a look at a DPS Malphite build, specifically a Tiamat Malphite build. Now some of you will remember that I did a video on Tiamat Gangplank, and yeah, it was effective. Having a shotgun is kinda nice, particularly for gold generation, but Malphite blows it out of the water. Everything about him makes this build perfect. Like, yeah, you can do more awesome things, and you might die a lot, but if you're up against the right team, you will obliterate them. And if you're not, you'll do a damn good job of it. And I'm gonna tell you why. Because, I mean, that's what I'm here for. So, Malphite has one main ability that you really want to be doing this for. The reason that this build is so good: Brutal Strikes, Malphite's W. It is a passive-active ability. The passive: Malphite's basic attacks hit units near his target for 62% of his attack damage. He already has 62% splash damage. So, you don't need as many Tiamats to get the same effect. Active, and this is the really, I'm not going to say overpowered, but this is the really powerful bit. Malphite's armor and attack damage increase by 40% for 6 seconds. 40%. So, if you have 100 AD, just 100 AD flat, you will get an extra 40 attack damage for 6 seconds while Brutal Strikes is turned on. That's a lot. If you've got 100 armor, you'll also get an extra 40 armor, but that's not the important bit here. The important bit is the massive increase in damage. Theoretically, Malphite can become the most damaged champion on a single hit because of the amount of AD he can get from Brutal Strikes. If you just built Bloodthirsters or something, and then hit your W, no one would hit harder than you in one swing. So there's that. Next ability, which is useful but less good for this, is Ground Slam. It has an AP ratio, I believe, although I'm not 100% sure on that. He hits the ground, dealing 220 plus... Sorry, it's an armor ratio. 220 magic damage to surrounding enemies, reducing their attack speed by 50% for 4 seconds. The damage it's getting is equal to 50% of armor. So yeah, it's got a 0.5 armor ratio. Sorry for getting that wrong in the first instance. So that's a good AoE damage ability, which also significantly reduces the DPS of champions trying to beat you up. And the last little step that makes this build really, really good is his ultimate. You've probably aware of how it works. It's got an AP ratio. He dashes in, dealing 400 magic damage, plus a 1-to-1 AP ratio, knocking enemies into the air for 2 seconds. So here's the combo, right? You've got all your Tiamat, so you have, with a finished build, 212% splash damage. You find the enemy grouped up. You ult in on them. They all spend 2 seconds in the sky. You ground slam, activate Brutal Strikes, and start punching. Each swing should hit everyone that you've been able to ult up, particularly if your positioning is good. Now, sometimes they'll be a bit more divided than that, but what you really want is to go in on groups that are very tightly clustered and then start swinging. And suddenly their whole team has no health left by the time they hit the ground. Then, anyone who starts running, you throw your Seismic Shard, which is really only useful for the slow and move speed increase. But at that point, they don't have anything left to fight with. Like, they could stay and try and beat you down, and in many cases, they'll be able to kill you off using crowd controls or just stopping you. But you will have killed 1 to 3 of their team. And the rest will be as close to dead as you can get. So, team fights where the enemy clusters well, or any instance where they're clustered well, if they're going to do the whole, hey, we're going to ambush you if you go for Baron by all hiding in this one little bush, if you've got a ward in that bush, just picture it. Picture yourself ulting in and slapping their whole team to death before they hit the ground. Some of the easiest kills you will get purely because of the raw damage output from this build. It's just absurd. So the build itself. Play it in the jungle, because Malphite is a really incredibly fast jungler. Get boots and 3 health potions first. And as soon as you've cleared the jungle once, go for Ninja Tabby, because armor will increase basically everything, and Ninja Tabby makes for a really easy jungle. Like, it's going to increase your damage output a bit, it's going to increase your defenses. And Brutal Strikes will synergize with it, you know, fun things will happen. Then your next 3 items are Tiamats, because they're really, really cheap, and getting them early means you can farm up at an absurdly good rate. You can clear jungle camps in about 3 swings apiece, unless they're a buff, in which case 5, 10 swings, maybe, depending on how early it is into the game. So you've got your 3 Tiamats. Now it's time to start making them work for you really well. Get a Triforce. Probably start with Frozen Mallet, and then get Zeal. Then finish the Triforce, because you got no more items, plus you can't actually build that Sheen independently, and there's no real point in getting it at this point. So once you've got your Triforce, build a Phantom Dancer. This build finishes with a lot of movement speed. We are talking 460 movement speed. You've got very high DPS, you've got a very high attack speed, you've got a lot of physical damage, approximately 300. 297 to be precise, and you can add an extra 40% to that. You can top 400 damage a swing with 212% splash. You don't want to be in the area. If you're fighting this build, get out while you can. Do not cluster. So yeah, like I said, it's got its strengths and weaknesses. Its strengths being clustered enemies, its weaknesses being enemies with lots of crowd controls that don't cluster. But it's a very strong build, and I recommend you give it a try. It is so fun. Thank you all for watching, and good night.